The square is built on the former stadium of Domitian, built by Emperor Domitian in 86 AD, and that's why it's a very long oval shape. Now the stadium actually had a larger arena than the Colosseum, and it was used mostly for festivals and sporting events. And then in the 15th century, the stadium was paved over to create a square, but there are still some remnants of the stadium around, and I don't know where they are, but they're here somewhere. Now, the largest fountain is the very famous Fountain of the Four Rivers, which is right there, and it's also known as the Fontana dei Quattro Fiumi, and it was constructed between 1647 and 1651 on the request of Pope Innocent X, and it was designed by Bernini. And Bernini was kind of the architect rock star of Italy, and he designed the Four Rivers fountain. And his full name was Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and he definitely was one of the masters of Italy. He was an Italian sculptor and architect. He lived from 1598 to 1680, and he not only designed several famous statues and fountains in Rome, but he also designed St. Peter's Square. So the fountain has four figures, and you can see they're pretty large. There's two of them here. Each figure represents a river from a different continent. So you have the Nile, the Ganges, the Danube, and the Rio de la Plata. And that represents the four continents through which the papal authority had spread. And this square has two other fountains on either side. One's pretty far away, and one's a little closer on this side. And you have the Neptune fountain and the Moor fountain. Now also in the square is a beautiful church, which is right here. And that is the church of Sant'Agnese Agone. And it was commissioned in 1652 by Pope Innocent X. And it was built on the site where, according to legend, St. Agnes was stripped naked, but miraculously was saved from disgrace by extraordinary growth of hair. Interesting. Now, the front facade of the Baroque church was designed by Borromini, who was Bernini's main rival. Construction started about 2 years after the completion of Bernini's Fountain of the Four Rivers, and it was completed in 1670. And last night we went inside and we sat for a little bit of mass.
Tradimento e a questa scelta, noi vogliamo depositare la nostra fede nel Signore che continua, nonostante tutto, a rinnovare in ogni momento questo che è l'edificio di Dio.
And again, there's the Fountain of the Four Rivers. Now, this fountain doesn't seem familiar. It's from Angels and Demons. I remember when Tom Hanks jumped in the fountain and he saved the cardinal who turned out to be the Pope. All right, see if this sounds familiar. We will destroy your four pillars. We will brand your preferiti and sacrifice them on the altars of science. Then bring your church down upon you. Vatican City will be consumed by light, a shining star at the end of the path of illumination. So this was the fourth altar of science, water, if you had seen the movie. Here we can see three of the statues that represent rivers. The Ganges in Asia. This apathetic river god looks away from the light of the church, representing the spiritual ignorance of this land. The Danube in Europe. The most civilized and cultured of the figures, the Danube looks toward and embraces the light of the Lord. The Nile in Africa. Bernini depicts the Nile with its head covered because at that time the source of the river was unknown. Symbolically, this also refers to what the Catholic world saw as the dark ignorance of the pagan world. The sculpture has not yet seen the light of Christianity. Obelisks were seen as an allegory to the link between earth and heaven. At the top of the obelisk there is a dove, symbolizing the Holy Spirit and motif of the Pope that commissioned this piece. You'll also see them by the Pantheon, the Piazza del Popolo, the Spanish Steps, in St. Peter's Square, and many other places in Rome. Now, why was the fountain and church built here, you may ask? When Pope Innocent X came to power in the 17th century, he decided to transform the piazza into a showcase for his family, the Pamfilis. The family palace, the Palazzo Pamfili, faced onto the piazza, as did the church of which Innocent was the sponsor. It was unveiled with much fanfare amid protests because the people wanted bread, not a fountain, during a famine. In decorating the piazza, Innocent X decided he also wanted to construct a fountain. This desire was partly logistical and partly personal. For one thing, there was a need to solve an unresolved problem of where the water from the Vergini aqueduct that fed the Trevi fountain was to terminate. However, he also wanted a fountain of his own to overshadow the existing commissioned fountain in the piazza. For the commission, Innocent X invited several artists to submit design proposals for a fountain and excluded Bernini from the invitation because Bernini had been wrongly blamed for causing cracks in the St. Peter's Basilica facade and bell tower. The design of the fountain was first commissioned to Borromini, but it was ultimately handed to his rival Bernini. This is the fourth river god, the Rio de la Plata in the Americas. Although he throws his hands back in surprise, this representative of the newly converted lands has begun to see the light.